Hello and welcome back to the Engerati studio. This time we're audio only, but throughout the day with some of the video interviews that you've seen a lot of investors, potential investors, fund owners who are looking at getting more confidence out of the projects that they invest in. And I'm joined now by Jorge Rodrigues de Almeida, who is the director of ICP Europe. ICP stands for Investor Confidence Project. And it seems quite timely, but probably not surprisingly, that you're here because we're here at the Investor Days in Lisbon. And can you tell us a little bit more about what your project does? The name seems to be very obvious, but could you give us a little bit more detail?
Okay, as the name says, what we are trying to do is give confidence for the investors to invest in the projects. And how do we do it? The way that we do it is we develop a standard, and this standard, we don't create new standards. What we do is we went to the market, we went to the project developers, we talk to the financial guys and ask them, what do you want to see in a project and how do you do a project? And they give this answer, so we design these new standards, which we call protocols. We don't call it standards because what we put inside of that document is all the standard and best practice that are in the market that people usually use to develop projects, and we produce these protocols that allow us for project developers to develop projects using best practice and best standards that are in Europe for ICP Europe, but this project is also used in the United States. It was born there with the Environmental Defense Fund, and we are working to go global with GBCI. So at the end of the day, the approach is always the same. It doesn't matter where you are. Of course, the standard that you need to use is a little bit different. It depends on the country, on the region that you are working on. But what we say is that this project has been developed using all the best practice and standards that are able that you can use to develop the project. So to do this, we developed this what we call the protocol. It's an engineering instrument that you can use. But at the end of the day, the investors ask us, we need someone to certify the projects. So we develop a tool that is energy efficiency ready investor. So it's a tool that it's like a stamp that you put on the project saying that this project is ready to be financed because it has followed all the best practice and all the best techniques that are able in the market.
So if I can just replay that to you, it's a little bit like you've got core standards, and the reason why you probably don't call it standards and protocols, so you've got core protocols that you put in there, and then you can layer over that the specific nuances for your project, because not every project is absolutely identical.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in this badge that people get. I call it a badge because that's the first thing that came to my mind. But how does that process work? So I'm doing a project. I access all of your protocols. I follow your protocols. I've then done that. And that certification must probably need someone from your end to review everything, yeah. Right? It's probably not as easy as saying, I've done all of this and you automatically get this badge.
Of course, it's not like that. Yeah. There are two main entities in this process. One is what we call ICP project developers. These are engineering firms that already are in the market, that have experience, that have all the things that we require. And we don't teach them about energy efficiency. What we teach them is about the standard, this protocol or ICP protocols. So we teach them about, we train them how to use our tools, our set of tools, and they can apply for it, they can develop the project, and at the end they will say, we developed the project using all the best practice. But we have also another entity, is the quality insurance provider. So this entity will look to the project and say if they have followed all the requirements that we have in our protocol. This doesn't happen at the end of the process. This will happen during the process. So the project.
So it's an iterative feedback that you get.
Because we go from the baseline to the projection of savings to M&V system. So Imagine that the project developer has failed on the baseline. If we only the quality assurance only happen at the end, they will have to revise all the process. So every step that he's making on the process, he could contact the quality assurance, say, we have developed the baselining. Do you agree? Do you think that we follow all the requirements that are on the protocol? They say yes, okay, it's you have followed, so you can go to the next step. So this is an interactive approach, and at the end of the process, if we have followed all the things from the baselining to the M&V process at the end, if you have followed all this process, you will get a stamp on your project, similar to the stamp that LEED or BREEAM give to buildings, but in this case we are talking about the underwriting phase, so we are talking about the project, not about the building. So we put a stamp on the project, say this is ready to finance because he has followed all the best practice. So there is a high probability of the savings that were calculated be achieved at the end of the process. What we say is that we don't guarantee the savings because that depends on a lot of other factors, but we say that the engineers use the best practices that are available on the market, and they reach every thing that we need for them to follow. So we guarantee that they use all the best practice and standards that are available in the market, and this gives confidence to the investor, because the investor know that he have someone that looked behind his shoulder and say, you have followed all the best practice, so this project is a good project to invest. So that's what
and it seems to me it makes it faster for people as well, because you constantly have, well, constantly is probably the wrong word, but you have all these check-ins all the time where people are kind of giving you that feedback loop and going, right, this is correct. So what are you hoping to and what are you hoping to get to in terms of the rollout of this? You mentioned at the top that it was born out of the US, and also within the whole project you've got the CEF platform and all that side of things. It seems to me that a lot of these platforms are doing lots of different components of all of this. How is it all going to join up? Is it going to join up? How are you going to shake hands with each other?
Okay, in the specific case of CEF, what we did is that we were working with them, so their platform use most of our best practice. So every time that someone upload a project to CEF platform, they are following all the ICP requirements. It's already implemented there. What we are doing now is we went to the market, to the investors, and we told them, okay, you ask for a standard, and then you ask for a stamp at the end of the process saying they follow that standard. We developed the standard, it's the protocols, we train people, project develops and quality assurance, and we put a stamp at the end of the process, the quality assurance guarantee that they follow the best practice. So are you able to finance our projects? And they say, yes, we have interest in finance our projects. So we created an investor network. It's a network that gathers a lot of investors that are working on this field. Some of them are here today at this meeting. And what they are saying is that we have interest in finance projects that have your stamp, because the due diligence cost that we have will be much lower because someone already performed a work that we have to do. And on the other hand, if you do project by project basis, it's quite complicated because every engineer works in a different way from the other engineer. Even if he works in similar way, it will present you the information in the totally different way. What we did is we standardized this approach so that at the end of the day you have the same amount of information that you need, and you are able to check if that information is correct or not. So it's much faster.
It makes it easier to compare and contrast and all those sort of things.
Okay.
Sorry, one of the other things that I also want to bring into the conversation, which is one of the things that we discussed this morning when we're doing a little prep for this, is and you mentioned it, and I've got a note here on my piece of paper, this sort of green business certification and things like that. How does that play in this entire space?
Okay, ICP was born in the United States in the Environmental Defense Fund. They created ICP because they have the same problems that we are discussing here, this gap between projects and the investors. And they created ICP using the same idea with different standards involved. So their protocol is a little bit different from our protocol because it collects information from standards and best practice in the States, but the result at the end is the same. And then a group of entities led by Energy Prof or Dr. Steve Fox, we decided to bring ICP to Europe. So we applied for Horizon 2020 and we got funded by them. So we developed ICP Europe. ICP Europe is nothing more than ICP brand, but with standards that are related to Europe. And we did a thing more. We went country by country. That was needed here in Europe. It was not needed in the States, but in Europe we just check every country if they have different standards from the European standards that we need to apply, and we have that also. And so we have a project that is running in the States, it's running in Europe. And, but we need to go global, and the approach was a partnership between the Environmental Defense Fund and Green Business Certification, GBCI. They made a partnership very recently, and the idea is to put ICP as the global standard for energy efficiency to be used on real estate. So we are now working on, we are under that process, moving things from Environmental Defense Fund to GBCI, just to make sure that we go global and we have a standard that you can use in India, in China, in Brazil, in Europe, or in the States. It will be the same core, the same stamp, but the content will be different by country or region by region. We have to think about that, but it will be different because the way that we do things here, it's different from the way that we do things in the States, but the investors are the same investors, so they don't want to see different approaches. What they want to see is this approach that is quite similar, and they are able to understand wherever the engineer right there.
So that the DNA of the projects, that fundamental core is very similar, but you've got a layer. So as we're coming to the end of our time, one of the things I wanted to ask you when you roll these initiatives out, and I appreciate you're early, but are you seeing early signs of the fact that you exist, you're creating better connections and faster joins between the investor community and the projects?
Yes, we are seeing the result of ICP. And one result is this conference, for instance, because I would say that 3 years ago it would be impossible to have this conference in Portugal, having in one hand project developers and in the other hand investors that are able to invest, but they want to reach project developers, and project developers want to reach investors. So this means that we have put ourselves in the middle of them, helping them to contact and use the same language, because sometimes there is a language barrier, because they are talking about engineers and the financial guys. We don't talk the same language. So it's an approach that we are doing. Also, in real projects, we have certified one project in the UK for the national healthcare system in hospitals. It's a very big project that we have certified. We are now working to certify projects all over Europe, namely here in Portugal. And we'll present some of the projects tomorrow that are working for the certification. So we are in business like we have 1 year or 1.5 years. We have the standards and the process to certify the entities only this year. So only at the beginning of the year we have developed that. So it's very recent, but even so we have deals that are happening with our stamp involved. So meaning that we are seeing the result of the developments that we have been done over this last 1 year or 2 years.
And on that note, we will leave it, but please do share the results of those projects, because I think it'll make a good accompaniment to this interview for people to see some of the real life things. And if we've done our job right and you're listening to this interview, some of those links will be below this audio file. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview from Lisbon Investor Days. Thank you.